Hello, hello, welcome. We will get started shortly. We're a small group today. All right, yeah, awesome. Hi, everybody, welcome. Happy Friday. Welcome to STEP. If this is your first time and if you're returning, welcome back. This is the second to last series in the Research and Involvement series, part of the Summer Transfer Enrichment Program. Yeah, so I always like to start off with a little intro. So my name is Elizabeth Vasquez. I am the Research and Involvement Coordinator at the Triton Transfers Hub. So in my role, I connect transfer students to research and involvement. And the Research and Involvement series is hosted by myself. I'll let that airplane pass. So the Research and Involvement series is hosted by me. And so in this series, you'll learn about the ways to get involved in all things research, and you'll also receive resume support. We actually did already have our resume workshop seminar. So if you want to look back at that, we have a recording of it on our website. And then as far as myself, I'm a resource for all transfer students year round. So if you needed to check in about, research, or you wanted resume support, or overall just wanted to learn how to get involved, yeah, I am that person for you. All right, so research and involvement series. So we have had 3 already. So we've had our research at UCSD earlier this week. And then last week we had the resume workshop. And then earlier this month, we had a webinar on how to get involved at UCSD, internships, research, and experiential learning. Today we're going to talk about topics, labs, areas, faculty, and more. And then we'll end off this series next week with how to outreach to faculty. Right. And if you're interested in seeing what was talked about in those past webinars, or if you weren't able to make it, if you visit our website at transferstudents.ucsd.edu, we have a new admits dropdown. And then in our recaps page, you can see those past session recordings. So while we are at the tail end of STEP, we still have a couple of more fun things that are happening. So next week we have Transfer Talks, which we will be able to meet the Transfer Hub staff virtually. And then we have Transfer Connects, mentor mapping in person. So this is also a great opportunity to meet other incoming transfer students. And then if you can't come in person, we have that same session, Transfer Connects, about mentor mapping virtually. And then, yeah, we'll end STEP with Welcome Day for STEP. We'll provide lunch, and we'll get to meet some of the Transfer Hub staff in person, and then also meet each other and other people who have participated in STEP. All right, so today's topic will be, we're going to talk more research, and we're going to talk more in detail about topics, labs, areas, faculty, and more. Oh, something that I forgot to mention earlier was the format of this meeting. So this is a Zoom webinar format, so it's different to a regular Zoom meeting. So in this webinar, I'm not able to see your faces. I see that we have participants, but if you did have questions, we have a Q&A feature. Feel free to utilize that throughout the presentation. And I've allotted time for at least 10 minutes at the end to just answer the Q&A. So I'll most likely do those live. If Simon's in the background, so if he's able to, he'll probably answer a few questions. But yeah, we'll have time for some live Q&A as well. All right. So a quick review. So I mentioned that we had a past recording about research at UCSD. So if you haven't had a chance to go to that webinar, I highly recommend. It's more of a general research webinar, but just as a quick review, research at UCSD, these are like the 4 kind of like popular ways to get involved with research. It's not the only ways, but they're the most widely known. So the Real Portal is like a portal that you can log into with your student SSO, and you're able to see postings for experiential learning. So internships, research opportunities posted by faculty members, you're able to see that on the Real Portal. The Undergraduate Research Hub is a center on campus. They're located in Student Center A, and they have a wide variety of academic research programs that are both yearly, quarterly, and then also summer research programs as well. So if you wanted to learn more about that, definitely visit ugresearch.ucsd.edu. And then another way to get involved with research is networking/contact. So networking with professors, faculty through cold emailing, office hours and stuff like that. This is also a great way to get involved with research. TAs is also a resource for you as well. And then honors programs. So your major department or your college may require you to fulfill some type of research requirement or research thesis, perhaps. So I highly recommend looking into your major department. For example, I like to use the example of psychology. The psych department has a psych honors program that you are able to do a research thesis for that. So, there's opportunities for research in different places. It just really depends on like what's accessible to you, what are you interested in, right? So if you wanted to learn more in detail about these 4 areas, I definitely recommend looking back to our past session recordings and look at the research at UCSD one. All right. So we're going to talk about research topics, right? So how to pick one, like what does a research topic look like, and how to get ideas for it. So some things to keep in mind when you're thinking about a research topic. You do not have to do research within your major, right? So for example, if you are a psychology major, but you really have an interest in politics, for example, and you wanted to delve into that poli-sci, you definitely are able to do that, right? Another thing that I mentioned earlier was, however, your major college might require or offer research, right? So if you did want to kind of stay within the field of your major, definitely look into your major department website. And again, our past research webinar kind of delved into that a little bit more, or your college too. Right, there might be some colleges, and I think it depends, have different requirements. So you might have an experiential learning requirement or a high impact practice requirement, and that could be fulfilled by research. So just something to keep in mind. Research experience can prep you for grad school. So let's say you're thinking about a master's program, you're thinking about PhD, having that research experience under your belt can, one, prep you for that master's level or doctoral level research expert work or experience, right? And also in applying to a grad program, so having some type of research experience, whether it's in the lab, whether it's conducting your own research, like a research thesis, research proposal, or such like that. So definitely, maybe this could be an influence for what you pick for your research topic. An example that I like to use with a past student was I had a student that was interested in MSW. So we kind of talked about how research can support with her thesis on social work. So, research can be beneficial. And then lastly, research experience may be required for med school. So if you're looking into applying to med school, or that you are going to apply to med school, it'd be beneficial to look into the requirements, because sometimes med schools might require X amount of research experience, or just in general, they'd like to see research experience on your application. So for that, I would look into the Career Center support. They have something called HealthBeat, and you can register as a pre-health or pre-med student. So if you wanted to get into the details of that and like, hey, how can my research, benefit my med school application or med school admission requirements, definitely look into that. And then same for any grad school prospective students that are in right now. So if you're thinking of a master's or PhD, the Career Center also can provide you support for that too. All right. So how to pick a research topic. These are some questions to kind of get you thinking. So number one, what excites you the most? So in thinking about research, what has been something that you've always been kind of excited about to talk about with like friends or family, or even in class or with professors? Number two, what makes you passionate or motivated to do something? So let's say that there's some type of like personal tie or something that you are really interested in and that you find passion and motivation for. Definitely consider that. And then number 3, what would you like to change? I like to give the example of a student that I had, and he wanted to connect Black students within the UC system more to kind of find each other and like build community. And so we connected him with ethnic studies professors at UCSD, and he kind of wanted to write a research proposal for like an app that he wanted to create to kind of connect Black students within the UC system. So he wanted to see the change of more community. So, it could be something like that. What would you like to create? So again, is it like some type of like UX UI interface that can contribute to a community or something like that? Or just in general, like what would you like to create? Number 5, what would you like to spend your time doing? What are major trends in academia and industry and/or in media right now? I think a big one that I've seen and heard of is like the use of AI, especially in higher education and how that's changing. I guess the direction of where higher ed is going. And then number 7, what are you studying in your classes? So maybe you've taken a class at your prior institution, or maybe you're about to take a class in fall quarter at UCSD, and maybe there's a topic in there that are like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe I'd want to look more into that, or I have my own questions about this topic. So definitely some things to kind of get you thinking. So how to pick a research topic. So these are, I'll go into links right now so that we can kind of look into it together. But you can look into research topics also by topic / subtopic, by research groups, and then I'll show a little bit of what that means. And then we'll talk a little bit about databases. So how can you search for faculty? And that can also help shape your research topic. And I'll get into how that goes, but yeah, so we can start by topic / subtopics. So an example of looking for, inspiration or how to pick a research topic is by the major page of your major or research area of interest. So I like to use the biology. So I think what I'll do is I'll exit here. Oop. So I like the example of the School of Biosciences department because they have a tab in which they have kind of categorize the research topics in biology for you, right? So they have stuff like behavior, biochem, bioinformatics, etc. I like how they have organized it, so, right? And so let's say we go into behavior, and here's a list of professors. Oops. And here are a list of professors in this area that do work in the category of behavior. And so you can look into their profiles, and then we'll get into a little bit about that in just a bit. But I like this example, and then we can do another one. I like to do the psych one as well. So the Department of Psychology also has organized their research topics into areas, and like you can see cognitive and behavioral, cognitive side, developmental, and then social psychology too. So that's a way in which you can kind of look for inspo for topics, like what's interesting to you, what calls to your attention if you're not sure as well. All right, so by group. So we'll go into examples about research groups. And so we'll try the first one, which is chemistry. So these are institutes and centers. So these are centers that kind of conduct their own research, but they're kind of grouped into, it's almost like a lab, and they have their staff, and sometimes they also take volunteers like student undergrads who are interested in doing research with them. But this is also another way to get into research as well, right? So topics, subtopics, and then institutes. And then if you look through their bio or like what they do, that can also kind of serve as inspiration, like, oh, this is really interesting. They're doing work in molecular and microbio, biochem, bioengineering. So this could also serve as an example of like how to get into research, and then how that can influence your research topic as well. All right. So databases, you can actually search for faculty by topic. I will say that UCSD profile sometimes isn't the most updated. So sometimes you might not find a specific faculty here, but it's still really useful if you have like a name and you just want to look them up, you can find them on UCSD profiles. So what I wanted to show, we'll talk about it a little bit in the upcoming slides, but if we go back to bio and we go back to behavior, and you wanted to read a little bit about this professor, you can visit their lab website. All right. So in thinking about a topic, you can also look into the databases. So colleges also might have some support for you. So I like to give the example of Revelle. And if you clicked on Revelle College Mentorship Program, it looks like, yeah, they have like also a mentorship program for students that you can find a mentor. So this is also a good way to look into, if your own college also has some support for you for a research topic. And then lastly, I also wanted to mention this program called Dine Coffee with a Professor, in which you can meet with a professor or a TA, which is a graduate teaching assistant of your choice, and learn more about your course or area of study. So whether you had questions about class or about the field, or this is also a good opportunity to talk about research too. So there are some guidelines on how to participate. So essentially, your college can give you like funds. I think it's usually in the form of Triton Cash Card, where you can invite a professor to dine or coffee, and then on the funds of your college. And so it's a good program, and I highly recommend looking into it. And then usually most colleges have that as well. So also another way to kind of, if you had a research topic in mind and you wanted some guidance, or you wanted to just talk more about research with a professor, this is also a good way to kind of get involved. So, yeah. All right. So examples of past student research topics. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, like, what does a research topic actually look like? So this is an example. Actually, this comes from the Undergraduate Research Hub of research topics that students have done. Right. So and it's both in STEM and social sciences. Research is not limited to just STEM, but a couple of those are analyzing the impacts of healthcare disparities upon Black women, body movement and dance, molecular basis of Alzheimer's disease, writing experimental poetry, right? Aerodynamics of a plane wing based on stingray physiology, movement abilities of preschoolers who were born premature, and then Latinx families' roles in nourishing resilience, right? So the topics are like range. So this is just like to kind of also get you thinking or give you an example of like what can be done in terms of research. And the opportunities are endless almost. All right. So another thing, and I'll go back just one more. So those are our topics. And so another thing that I think is also useful is faculty, right? Types of faculty. At your prior institution, you might know as professors as one, and then at UCSD at least, there might be some limitations. And it's good to know about the types of faculty because the different classification of faculty might mean that they have different types of research or might conduct different types of research. And then it's also good to know because some research programs, such as the ones from the Undergraduate Research Hub, require you to have a faculty mentor, and that faculty mentor has to be like it can't be a TA, it does have to be a professor. So it's good to know the differences. So just for your knowledge, right, types of the faculty and then what it means for research. So the lecturer teaches classes and meets with students, teaching professor, focus on teaching courses and not necessarily research, and then adjunct professor are part-time at the university and likely will not have research. So those top three, if you went to a community college, you might be more familiar with these type of professors, right? Because definitely professors at the community college level are different to professors at UCSD. And that could also be because UCSD is, well, the UC system in general focuses more on research, and UCSD is an R1 institution. So really what that means is that there's very high research activity at UCSD, and therefore the professors are categorized slightly differently than what you may be familiar with at the community college or even another prior institution if you're coming from, another 4-year. All right. So faculty who will have research, if we're going down the line, assistant professor and associate professor. So assistant professor is kind of newer to the university. They tend to have less lab funding because they're kind of new, and then have more undergrads on their team. An associate professor is kind of middle rank. They might have a few years of experience at UCSD, and then they might already have like an established research group. And then that this third section, this is where you can kind of begin to see us divide. Kind of like, and this isn't rule or set in stone, but typically professors have years in the field. They may have more established research and funding. A distinguished professor is an honor after many years of services. Professor emeritus is retired. So usually these faculty are retired. They may still have research, but probably not really active because they're kind of retired. So just something to keep in mind. And then the provost is an active faculty teaching at UCSD. And they're kind of like the head or lead of all things academic affairs for your colleges. And they're also very well connected in research networks. This is also somebody that you can come to kind of as a last resort if you're really struggling with getting involved with research. But we will talk about how to get involved with research first. Oh, right. So now you kind of have an idea about type of topics that you can do, where to get inspiration for topics, how to search for them on your major, through faculty profiles and stuff. So what you want to do now is, if you are interested in getting involved with research and you want to learn more, or if you're interested in joining a lab or something like that, making an Excel or a table for yourself to kind of get your thoughts organized is really important. So on one of the sections, you should have like a professor or lab name, some notes about that professor. Let's say you're like, oh, Professor Smith, he does work in microbiology, and specifically, this is something that I'm interested in as a career field, right? And then you can rank your interests like 1 to 10. And then any links too. So if that faculty professor has like a lab website, definitely write that down. Right. So this is just for you to kind of keep track of the professors that you're interested in. All right. Research labs. So we'll do a little bit of a research lab search. So topics, faculty, and then now we are go into research labs. All right. So what to expect? So research/projects, publications, and works is something that you can all find information on for a research lab, typically. People, personnel, team, group, join us. These are all keywords that you can look for when you're looking into labs as well. So this is more so on the STEM side as well, but we'll check some out together. So I will I will open this. Okay. So this is an example of a research lab website. It's marinalab.org. And usually when you're on this lab website, you can kind of read about the type of work that they're doing, their research interests, their lab philosophy, all these good stuff. And something that I always recommend to students is, one, looking at the research tab. So you can kind of learn more about the type of research that they're doing. And then second is meet the team. Anything that says meet the team, join us, our team, staff, like all these keywords is also essential to kind of look. You can see, the PIs, principal investigators, who are kind of the lead of a lab. You can see grad students. Then if you scroll down, undergraduate researchers. So this is what is something, and we'll talk about what green flags are and getting involved with research. So once you see that there's undergraduate researchers that are part of this lab, that kind of gives you an idea like, oh, okay, cool. So now I know that they do recruit undergrads, or undergrads do work in this lab. So this is always a good signal. And then if you scroll more, it says join us. We will click that. Why join? We have multiple open positions, undergraduate researchers, and then join us. So for this lab in particular, it says prospective grad students. So this is where it kind of it's kind of tricky, right? So for this lab website, it says, prospective grad students, postdoctoral candidates, but it doesn't say much about undergraduate students. So when you get to this point, you're kind of like, but it doesn't say like, how do I apply as an undergrad? So that's when you want to send an email, right? Email to learn more. But this is just to kind of give you an idea about how you can look into lab websites, and how lab websites are also, good ways of getting into research or learning about how to get involved as well. And then what I did want to show, and I'll go back to the other one, but green flags. Right? So a couple of things that we saw on this past lab website is an undergrad or previous undergrads, right? So this means that they are open to having undergrads. They know what tasks to assign to undergraduate level students. A join us, contact us tab. So we saw the join us section, and that means that they're open to taking students. And it's even better if it mentions or gives directions for undergrads in particular. This lab's website in particular didn't mention undergrads, but we now know that this lab website has undergraduates, so that's always a good sign. And then photos of the lab out where lab folks are now. We didn't look at that with this lab website, but that's also something to keep in mind when we're looking into labs. Okay. And then let's look at professor. So let's say that a professor didn't have a lab website or their personal website, but they have a UCSD faculty profile. So this professor is in the Department of History, and you can kind of read about, their accomplishments, their types of research that this professor has done. I would also recommend looking at their publications and then the courses that they've taught. So let's say you're interested in doing some type of research in history, and you look through his past experiences in research, and sometimes it'll be like tell you what that professor is currently working on. For example, this professor is saying he's currently researching the history of water and soil conservation in Northwest China. So let's say you're like, that's really interesting. So you would get in contact with this professor to maybe ask more questions, maybe ask them about their publications as well. And then I will talk more about how to contact faculty on our next research webinar. All right, and then the last one, Encore Group. All right, so this is another website for research, another team of researchers. So this is also something that you can look into as well. Same method, you can look at the type of research that they're doing. And then you can look at their team. It's always good to look at what type of researchers they have. You can scroll down. They have a site lead at UCSD. So it's always good to kind of, I guess, look around and see how you can get involved as well. All right. So these are ways to kind of get involved. Yeah. So when you're doing your search for labs or right, and labs is more so that word kind of aligns more with STEM. But if you're also looking into research, and you're in the social sciences, it's almost the same method, right? Looking into faculty and their research experience and their publications, and then reaching out to faculty. For more of those like labs are more STEM based, is also looking into faculty and seeing if they are part of a research lab, if they have their own lab website, looking into their teams and seeing what kind of research their team is doing and if there's an opportunity to get involved, right? So these are like kind of the green flags that you want to look at. Yeah. So if you're wondering like what now, how do I contact faculty, right? Because we talked about topics, we've talked about areas, groups, research groups, and then also faculty and how to find them. So how do you contact faculty when you've gotten to the point of finding them? So I will talk about how to contact faculty, cold emailing. What can you say in a cold email to a professor? And that will be next week on how to outreach to faculty for research opportunities from 12 to 1. Yeah. And one last thing before I forget, there is a field of research opportunity that was shared to me by a professor. So it is social sciences research. Applications are now open on a rolling basis until week 0 of fall quarter. So that's like in about a month-ish. So if you're interested and you want to visit, or if you're interested in this research and how to get involved and how to apply, mfrp.org. It'll have more information and then the application on there too. So, and I will say that one of the requirements is Spanish speaking skills. So if you can hold a conversation in Spanish, this research that is one of their eligibility requirements. So just want to put that out there that they are currently looking for undergraduate researchers that are interested. All right, so that was it. We have some time for questions so if you have questions about faculty, labs, anything that you saw in our presentation today, please let me know. All right, I'm going to take a look at oh, I see, sorry, could you go back to the second picture of the green flags? Yes. Yeah, and this could go towards, right, STEM, these green flags towards STEM labs, and then also social sciences research as well. And then I'm looking at one. Yes, so for the PowerPoint slides, if you missed the first 15 minutes, we are actually recording this, and it will be on our recaps page for STEP. And I think Simon is typing in an answer. He might be able to link that webpage for you. Okay, as for connecting for research with someone from the Comm department and the Latin American Studies department, would there be a separate website that focuses on faculty that does research in these majors? So yeah, that's a great question. So for social sciences research, such as Latin American Studies and Comm department, if you're going to the department website for Comm, for example, and you go to faculty, kind of like the example that I did for the history professor, you would want to look at like what they've done in that. So I can actually do that one more time. Here we go. So Department of History, you can go to people, faculty, and then it would have like a list of faculty as well. And so based on like what you're interested in, I would look into your faculty. And it depends from department to department. Sometimes department websites don't, they don't categorize faculty by area, and some do. It really just depends. But this Department of History have fields of emphasis, so this is what I would look into. So for COM, that's what I would do as on their department website, and then same for the Latin American Studies is go to the department website, look to see if your website categorizes research by area, and then that should kind of like at least narrow down based on your interests in different research topics. So that's what I would recommend doing. And I think I got that full part of that question. Okay. When is the best time to look at the Real Portal? Do opportunities generally get posted at a specific time of the year? That's a good question. And something that I didn't say earlier, which was kind of my disclaimer, is that on the Real Portal, you will see postings on there that have been there for quite a while, like months. And that's only because professors like just leave that on there, even if they have already if they have already recruited people for that position, they will leave it on there so that it could like carry on to the next year. And so sometimes professors take a long time to get to you. But to answer your question, no, there isn't a specific time of the year. I would check it year round. And then the best time to look at the Real Portal, I would say as soon as you're able to, right? Check it a couple of times, especially now in summer. If you have access to it, definitely open, and you can sign in with your SSO. So right now, I think it's a good way to kind of look at what's available on there, what you see on there. So I think now is a good time, and to just kind of like periodically check it every quarter, if you're still actively looking for research opportunities. Is there other labs that may not have websites online on your majors page? If so, how can you find them? When I'm looking at labs, a lot of them are old and outdated, so I thought maybe there was other ways to look at labs and ongoing projects. So typically for lab websites, they usually have a PI, like a principal investigator. And that principal investigator is likely a professor at UCST. So I would say that even the better way to kind of get to know about labs is to connect with professors. And that faculty page of professors is usually always going to be there. So I think my question, and then I'll answer that live. I think my answer to your question is you're going kind of directly to the source. I recommend going directly to the source, which is principal investigators or the professors of that lab. Yeah. And then you can also contact the lab, and if there's contact info for the principal investigators or the professors, definitely you can reach out to them to ask more. And then again, if you're cold emailing and you're interested to learn like what you can say in that email, we'll talk about that at the next webinar. That's a good question. Real postings sounds like a research topic. How long do they stay up? So for the Real Portal, some of those postings stay up there for months at a time. And sometimes you'll see postings past the deadline, which is kind of confusing to students. But from what I know is that sometimes professors just leave that posting up there, even if they have already recruited for that position. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. These are good questions. Mhm. All right. I just see Victor's question, and then that could be a research for someone to explore. How long do they stay up? I'm not too sure about what the question is asking. Um, but in terms of the Real Portal and topics, so I will say sometimes professors will do postings on the Real Portal, and then they will in that posting kind of give a description of what that position is for. And so that could also, if that aligns with your interest in research topics, definitely I would recommend going for it. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. What is the best way to view all of the slideshows from STEP? I see Simon is typing, but just so everybody knows too, is that most of our sessions are recorded and they will be on our website, transferstudents.ucsc.edu. And then we have a drop down called New Admits. And then if you do that drop down, STEP. And then if you go to STEP, we have a recaps page. So we do have the page of which we have recorded sessions. I know psychology has some research classes. What is the difference between the research class and the lab? That's a good question. So I know for a research lab, you are able to get academic credit. And usually it's like let's say if you're doing psych, you would get psych 199, and it differs, right? Because there's different types of like academic credit that you can get for research lab. So I will say that I do know that you can get academic credit if you're doing research in a research lab. But if it's a research class, maybe like I'm not too sure about the research classes, but I'm thinking maybe it's like a research seminar. So a research lab, if you're doing research, you are kind of jumping on to the project that's already in motion. There's already research, being a project that's already in progress and you're contributing it to it. In a research class, my assumption is that it's kind of like a research seminar where you would be conducting your own research or creating a research proposal or a thesis of some type. So that's how I see the distinguished of the two. And people with the psychology major join the research about data science. Um, I would say that there isn't a role in which you have to do research in your major. Sometimes research labs do have like some type of prerequisite, or sometimes they do prioritize, majors, or meet some type of majors. But that's not to say that there's a rule that if you're a psych major, you're not allowed to, pursue research in data science. So it depends, right? If you're entering like a lab that's based in data science or a project that's based in data science, or if you want to conduct your own research in data science. So it depends, right? And consider the factors that there might be like priority or preference for data science majors. But that's not necessarily the case for every single situation, but I would say case by case. All right. All right. These are great questions. Um, I'm just trying to look through to see if I have missed something. All right. Awesome. Well, that is I don't see any more questions. I'll stay on for about a few minutes and then, yeah, but that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you at our last research webinar. But I'll stay on for a couple more minutes if folks have more questions. All right. Have a good weekend. Oh, have a good day, Mary. I'm glad it was helpful. All right, cool. All right, thanks, Simon.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
You too.